Okay, guys, so I really wanted to do this one in video form, but I'm not in Houston where I have better access to downloading video. So this will be an audio, and maybe I'll do something if I get into Houston anytime soon and I can have better equipment. I'll get back on video as soon as I can. But I wanted to come on and talk about this because I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and it's just been in my mind. And I think it's just something we all probably ask ourselves and other people and our doctors or whoever will listen, like, will we heal? Will we heal? And, look, I'm just one other person out here on YouTube. So, you could be like, okay, Jen, so who gives a shit whether you think that we heal or not? But I want to just say that for the record, I don't just think we heal. I know we heal. I know we heal. I think the problem is that there is no way that anybody could be prepared for the severity and duration of what many of us are going through with this, and the ups and downs of it, and hey, I thought I was doing great and I've had a setback, or whatever it is. It's so ludicrous, right? Like, you really can't believe this could be happening unless you've gone through it, which again is why it's so hard for our loved ones, right, to understand, like, how does this really work? But I wanted to come on because this conversation I had with somebody the other day was sticking with me. And of course, the question she was posing was, do you really think we heal? And I do. And she gave this metaphor for what she felt like has happened in her life as a result of being on benzos, coming off them in a taper, and struggling in the taper, and then having a hard time since coming off. And she talked about the metaphor she used, and she gave me permission. Her name's Michelle. I'm not going to use her last name, obviously, but thank you, Michelle, for this. But she used the metaphor for herself of that she's on this island all by herself, right? And she's in this, but she was self-sustained. She was fine. She had a home. She had it all figured out, but she was on this island. And all of a sudden, this Category 5 hurricane comes in, and it's coming right towards this island. And she gets in her bathtub, and she is just riding this thing out, and it is devastating, right? And she's just knocked every which way there is. She has no idea what's going on. She has no idea if she's going to make it through. And eventually, things calm down enough, and they're quiet enough in some ways to where she realizes she's still in the bathtub and she's alive. But as she gets out of the bathtub, she steps into what would have been her house, and there's nothing there. And as she steps around, she's walking around her little tiny island, and her home is in a million different pieces all around her. Everything she'd built to have running water and trees to have food and things that she was growing, like, everything's just been decimated. And she's walking around kind of in disbelief that, and she's looking at the carnage. And when I was talking to her, she was really struggling. And one of the things that I said to her was, and I say this for myself too, I always, when I teach something or I talk about something, I'm usually learning it myself, and it's usually something I need to hear. But when she said, I'm walking around now looking at the carnage, period. And I was like, I think that's the problem. There's no period at the end of that sentence. I'm looking at the carnage. What is that thing called? It's called an ellipses, I think, right? ... meaning to be continued, meaning there's more to come, right? But I think what happens for us in this is that we have periods at the end of this. I'm not going to heal, period. I'm afraid I'm not going to heal, period. But really what we are in through so much of our recovery is the ... right? We're in the to be continued. We're in the meantime. We're in there's more to the story. The story's not going to end here. And one of the things she brought up that I think was interesting, I think it was through a conversation that she may have had with Baylissa at some point. But she, I guess, had asked Baylissa the same question, like, what if we never heal? And Baylissa's point was a really good one when I thought about it. And basically what Baylissa said to her is, look, social media has been around for a long time. Facebook has been around for a long time. There's lots of Facebook groups. Where is the Facebook group for all the people that said, I came off this drug in the 70s and 80s and I've never healed? She's like, don't you think that if there were a group of people that came off in the 70s and 80s or early 90s, that there would be a group that said, I took this and I've never healed. She's like, that you don't see that group. You see protracted groups. You see people taking a lot longer than we would like. You see people talking about years, and that's a very long time to be in discomfort. But I thought it was a good point, because I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I don't see these groups. I don't see people talking about, I came off Xanax in 1988 and I've never been the same. Now, again, that isn't to minimize that, a 5-year process or a 5-month process or a 10-month process or a 10-year process, whatever it is, it's all too long, right? I mean, the worst kind of pain is our own pain. And to be in it for any longer than, for than a few moments just feels inhumane to us. But it was a good point. And so I liked her idea of, first of all, I thought the metaphor was apt, that we've survived, or we are surviving. Many of us are right in the middle of it. I'm still in the middle of a taper. So I'm surviving what on any given day is a category 5 hurricane, right? And I know I'm going to make it. But I also know that one of the things that happens, and we talked about this too, was that, she was describing that when she was in the middle of her taper and soon off the medication, she was in such survival mode. Like she was just hanging on for dear life, right? And in some ways it protected her, because she didn't have enough awareness to be able to be thinking about what's lost, what's left, what's possible, right? And so what she's doing now, even though she in some ways feels worse, partly she feels worse because she's in this ellipsis. She's in this place of, I can now see how bad this was. And I do think that there's a little bit of a counterintuitive, paradoxical piece to this, that as we get better, we feel worse, because as we cognitively clear, as things begin to clean up a little bit, as we get some windows, as we begin to, some of the symptoms begin to abate, we can see a little bit of the wreckage or the carnage or the time lost or the relationships hurt, whatever it is. We can see it with eyes that are a little bit more clear. And so we can actually feel, I think, more pain. It's kind of like healing from a burn, right? I mean, the healing is terribly painful. And I think that can be true for us here as well. And a lot of times we think it's, again, some kind of huge setback, when the reality is it could be that we're actually seeing things a little bit more clearly. And so we're taking it in with more of like an impact. I also think there's moments of regression for the sake of progression, where it feels like we're going backwards, but it's like a slingshot to move us forwards. I've talked about that before. So do we heal? I do think we heal. Guys, I am banking on it. I am counting on it. I am looking at all the people that have come before us. And we have to have that, I believe, that belief kind of in our mind. In my last video, if you were one of the first 30 some odd people to listen to the last video I made on race, please listen to it again, or just know that I changed the E in race to embrace rather than engage. So I talk about race being realize, allow, calmly embrace. And that's kind of the approach that I'm really trying to take with myself, and maybe promote with you guys if it's helpful, if it's a useful acronym for us to think about how we move through this. But the other thing that came up in my conversation with this person was, she was talking about, yeah, but I'm making all these neural pathways. I've for years I've been afraid. I've made all these really neural pathways, and it's true. But I think maybe we should stay away from that term, because I think sometimes when we hear things like neural pathways, it freaks us out, right? So what I would think about it is this: like, let's say you live in a house and, there's the beach 100 yards away, and there's tall grass between you and the beach. And every day for 4 years, you walk back and forth on a path. And so after 4 years, you have this very well-worn path between your house and the beach through this tall grass, right? Well, then let's say all of a sudden the day comes, you don't want to go to the beach anymore. You want to go to the pond behind the house, right? But you haven't been to the pond before. You've only been once. And so you have to kind of begin that building that new path to the pond, right? And so the first 100 times you go through, you're going to be in big weeds. You're going to be struggling to get to that pond, right? But eventually, over time, you will build a new pathway. Now, think about that. You don't actually have to go and and wait for the grass to grow on the path that went to the beach before you can go to the back of the house and go to the pond, right? And I think that's sometimes what we think has to happen is that, oh God, I've created all these neural pathways and all these grooves in the record, and everything is, everything, it's all habitual now and it's bad habits. And yeah, we have to create new habits. And with that is going to come some time and some patience of building that new path and walking that same line to where over time the grass goes down, the weeds go down, and we now have a path to the pond out back. But it's not like we have to do anything about that path that we made to the ocean. It just does, it'll take care of itself, right? We stop walking that path to the ocean. It'll start growing. The grass will start growing there eventually. Weeds will start popping up. Eventually, you won't see that path any longer, but you didn't have to do anything about it. And I think that's sometimes where I get stuck, and I think other people get stuck, is we have to do something about this path we've created. I don't think so. I just think we have to focus on where we want to go next or what we want to do different. If I've spent every day, all day laying in my bed, I've created a nice groove, right, where I'm going to have a lot of resistance to getting up out of that bed. And it may take me months of practicing to get up and go for a 5-minute walk, okay? But at some point, I'm going to have created that new thing. I don't have to burn the bed to be able to go walk the 5 minutes. I just have to be willing to put up with some of the frustration and some of the resistance and some of the challenge that we face in starting to implement something new. And then the last thing I'll say, again, thinking about this person who was asking me, Jennifer, will I heal? Will we heal? Do you think we'll heal? Is I talked to her about something I wrote about in my book called the Stockdale Paradox. And I've talked about it on videos before. James Stockdale was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He survived unsurvivable conditions for a long time, and many of his comrades died while they were captured. And when he got back to the States and they interviewed him, they said, how did you do this? And he said, well, my comrades would say, I'm going to be home by Christmas, or I'm going to be home by my son's 7th birthday. And then that day would come and it would not be so. And they would get deflated and they would get defeated. And then they'd say, I'll be home by Easter. And Easter would come and they'd get more and more despondent. He said, I learned really quickly to say, one day I will be free. One day I will be home. I don't know when that day is going to be. It's clearly not today. So today, all I can do is focus on staying alive and getting through this minute, this hour, this hand that I've been dealt. And what I said to her is, because she said, I don't know how much more of this I can take. I said, if I had a crystal ball, and I said to you, you are going to be healed on December 24th. On December 24th, you're going to wake up and you're going to feel good. She's like, I could totally handle it. Wouldn't even faze me. I could totally make it to December 24th. And I said, okay, then really what we're dealing with is the oppression that we feel because of the uncertainty of this, right? Because when she's saying, I can't take it one more minute, but then I say to her, but if you were going to know you were totally healed on December 24th, which is however many months away, I can't do the math, 8 months away, 7 months away, and you're telling me you could do that with no problem because you would know you're going to be okay, then really what we're dealing with is again, that oppression that we feel because we don't have the certainty. We don't have the date. So many of us would be okay and we would be able to really, it's amazing what we've already survived, right? And it's amazing what we could survive and can survive, especially if somebody said you only have to do it for 5 more months or 8 more months or 1 more year or 2 more days or whatever it is. But we have to remember that then, that if the answer to that question is, I could do 6 more months if I knew I was going to be healed, then what we're dealing with is the oppression of uncertainty, okay? Which again, if you think about it, every day of your life, even before benzo withdrawal, I've talked about this before, you were dealing with uncertainty. Just like I've said before, we don't say to our friends, I'll see you next weekend unless I get hit by a truck. Or I'll see you at the next family reunion unless I have an aneurysm. We don't say those things. Are we certain we're not going to get hit by a truck or have an aneurysm? No, but we are going along with kind of life as, we think we're going to be okay. The problem in this is we've lost that confidence to where we think we're going to be okay, right? So we're just clamoring for and starving for that certainty. So will we heal? We will heal, guys. I know we will. And I look so forward to hearing from people on my Instagram or my email or on my YouTube, like telling me, that they've healed. That day will come. And in the meantime, we're dealing with the Stockdale paradox, right? We need to rely on that. Today is not that day, okay? But that day will come. And until that day comes, we have to play the hand we're dealt. So anyway, I needed to hear this for myself, and I needed to share it with you guys. But I loved the metaphor that she used. I thought it was very appropriate and apt. And then the conversation went into these other areas around the Stockdale paradox and neural pathways and all these things that we get scared of and wonder about. And so I just wanted to share them with you tonight. Thanks, guys.